Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and today, special episode, because it's just Scott and I. Really, that's why it's extra special. It's not because of the whiskey we're drinking. Actually, it is. But we'll get to that in a minute. Scott, what's going on, man? How are you?
Oh, late night. Trying to make sure both kids are in bed and poured some good whiskey, so excited for this one.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat the fall. It's here. All the awesome releases have gone out. Everybody and their mother has written about them, and we got a podcast about them. Like, it's just, we have to do that, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say whiskey news lately, fast and furious. I know our website's been busy.
For sure. It's been wild. Like today, we got the Michael Bublé news.
Yeah, who doesn't want to drink a little whiskey while listening to some Michael Bublé?
I know, and a little bit of Heaven Hill Canadian mixture. What about that?
Unexpected.
Wild. And, fair price point, by the way. Fair price point.
Goodness. It's like $30.
Yeah, $29.99. I was like, how about that?
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see how it tastes. But, we're not here to talk about Heaven Hill. I know that's your favorite brand. We're actually here to talk about probably the most well-known bourbon brand in all of the world right now. And it's Buffalo Trace. It's their time to shine. It is the O and SOND. It's October. And that means two things are coming out. Buffalo Trace Antique Collection and the new Pappy Van Winkle Collection will come out later in the month, early November. So
kind of forgot about that.
It's big time because first time ever, Bourbon Lens history, we are getting to try Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. How pumped are you?
I'm pretty excited because we always hear about the hype. We've obviously tasted some of the whiskeys over the years. They vary year to year. Historically, I've enjoyed them. It's just you can't find them. So once in a lifetime opportunity, maybe not. We'll see. But in case it is, I'm excited for it. So,
I mean, I don't fangirl a lot. Like, I feel like we get our fair share of whiskey samples, but this is pretty freaking cool. Like, these are some of the whiskeys I've paid an astronomical amount for, like for just a pour of them in my life. I once bought a pour of THH for $70 at Sidebar. It was my wife's birthday, and I said I was going to celebrate.
Damn it, I'm going to celebrate you being another year older.
Exactly. That's right. If you're going to party hard. Or as Garth says, party on. Just simple. Keep it simple.
Party on, Wayne.
Party on, Wayne. And I just can't thank Buffalo Trace and the team for just including us in this opportunity. It's been great. And if you want to know just how much we actually appreciate them, just go listen to the episode we did with Freddie for Bourbon Heritage Month. We had a great time with him, and that opened my eyes to see Buffalo Trace for more than the behemoth that it has become. It felt like family when we were sitting there talking to Freddie.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously one of the largest distilleries in Kentucky and most well-known. But really, when you sit down with Freddie, it's just like, he's pouring the whiskey for you on his back porch or something. It's like, yeah, come on in. So,
yeah. So, I'm excited for this. I've never had Eagle Rare 17, even though it's Eagle Rare 19 for this year, or Sazerac 18. So excited to try those. Scott, have you not had any of the five previously, or have you had a taste of all five previously?
Okay, so yes, I have tried the Thomas H. Handy. I know that we tasted that back when you were in your whiskey kick, your whiskey buying kick many years ago, early in the podcast. Yeah. Back before we knew what we were doing. Maybe we still don't. Maybe we still don't. So yes, I've had Thomas H. Handy, and that was back before I even knew rye whiskey was a thing. So it kind of opened my eyes to it, like a couple other rye whiskeys have over the years. But George T. Stagg, I've had, I don't know. Obviously, this might sound kind of bad, but it obviously wasn't that memorable because I don't remember where exactly I was. I think I was at a friend's house at his bar, just sitting at his bar in his basement. But other than that, no, I've drank a shit ton of Eagle Rare 10-year. But obviously this is almost double the age.
Almost double the age, and 11 points higher on the proof. I actually have some good memories with George T. Stagg. So was on a business trip. We were with some consultants. The consultants started buying drinks, and it was $20 a pour at this hotel in Arizona. And they bought the bottle. And so 5 of us drank a whole bottle of George T. Stagg in one evening. So that was a ton of fun. Enjoyed that.
So you do Bob, or do not remember that?
Oh, I do remember. I had to get
you said there was 5 of you. Okay, so
5.
Maybe not so bad.
We drank responsibly. And most of them were drinking it over ice. I couldn't do that to George T. Stagg myself. William LaRue Weller, Bob gave me a sample of 1 ounce one time. So that's the only time I've had WLW. And I was lucky enough to win a raffle right after my son was born in 2019. And I do have a bottle of Thomas H. Handy. So it's holding on by a thread. But it's damn good whiskey, so it doesn't go away. I don't bottle pour bad whiskey or good whiskey. I don't bottle pour all of it, any of it. I just drink it all. Yes, oxidation's a thing, but who cares when you spend $125 on a bottle?
Yeah, you've gotten your enjoyment out of it so far. Yeah.
I'll keep enjoying it, even if it's a little thin.
So maybe it'll taste better. You never know. It might improve. It might not. There's been some whiskeys we've tasted that have improved after sitting in a bottle for a year or two.
1,000%. I definitely thought I was going to bottle pour one really expensive whiskey one time. And luckily we came back to it a year later and we're like, oh, where did this come from? So we won't mention any names, but I'm sure you can go figure it out in the Bourbon Lens archive and know which bottle we're talking about. But today, so just kind of give you a rundown before we dive into the whiskey. We're going to give you just our initial impressions. Scott and I, before the podcast, sat here and we nosed our 5 different whiskeys that we're going to try. And so you're going to get live reaction for us. Yes, I know it's going to be lightly edited. It's okay. This is live reaction. We're shooting from the hip. And at the end of this, Scott and I will tell you our favorites from the collection. We'll give you our top 3. We won't rank them all. You could figure out which ones are going to be in the other 2. But we're excited to dive into these, and we're going to be fans tonight, guys. Just like you all, as you all listen to this. So, Scott, are you ready to taste our first one up? One of the oldest whiskeys in the collection here in the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, Sazerac 18, which is a Kentucky style rye whiskey coming in at 90 proof. We both nosed it. We both loved it. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So based upon the nose alone, it's very fruity, very like tropical. I initially thought my first nosy note was muted oranges. Like it was just kind of in the background. And I was trying to figure out what else I was smelling. And I think it was like black pepper. That's what jumped out of the glass. But then as I sat with it and it maybe just opened up a little bit, it's definitely got some tropical fruits.
And I'm right there with you. Tropical fruits, it's island citrus, right? You could get a little grapefruit. You could get a little orange. There's the hint of Buffalo Trace cherry, I think, is just something that you find in all of these, just from nosing them so far. But that vanilla caramel swirl thing happening in the background that gives you that hint of like black pepper, like you were saying, gives you that hint of spice. It shows up right on the back end of that nose. And you go into a palate that is swirling with flavor at 90 proof. I think it's got a ton of flavor that kind of marry up with the nose from a punchiness perspective. So interested to know what you kind of got from a tasting perspective on the nose or on the palate. Sorry.
Yeah, on the palate. I mean, it's super easy drinking. You can tell it's one of the lighter proof whiskeys in the bunch, or it's gonna be. I mean, we know the jump in proof across the spectrum, but this one kind of eases you into it. It's like, okay, older whiskey, you get a little bit of oak, you get a lot of tannin, but you still get that fruit, citrus, tropical note that kind of carries through. But it's a little drying. It's got a little astringency to it, but it's an 18-year-old whiskey that it's been in wood for quite a while.
I agree with you. That citrus baking spice, definitely there. And then that oak influence is very subtle for it being 18 years old. They did a really good job making sure it wasn't like over oaked. And then the caramel and vanilla gives you a nice sweetness. But I agree on the end, that finish is super drying. It doesn't linger for a super long time, which I didn't expect at 90 proof. But that dryness, the astringency, as you said, definitely hangs out there on the back end with a little bit of that baking spice, cinnamon, nutmeg type thing happening, just kind of lingering on the back end for me.
I almost think it's by necessity too. Like if this were 120 proof, well, first of all, they probably wouldn't have that much to bottle. But if it was 120 proof, it might be overwhelmingly oaky. It's 18-year-old whiskey. I mean, that's hard to achieve.
Yeah. And the more I drink this, the more that tropical fruit note also comes back from the nose, comes to the palate. Like I don't want to say fruit cocktail, but it's definitely, a little bit of the orchard fruit, a little bit of the citrus island type fruits, kind of all mingled into one. And I'm here for it. Overall, first impressions of ever drinking Sazerac 18. I'm not mad one bit. So it's a great start to the podcast. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. And to piggyback off of what I just said about the oakiness, it needed to be proofed down a little bit. And this is shout out to our friends at breakingbourbon.com, who every year they do like a super deep dive into BTAC. They put up some stats about, and all this is on Buffalo Trace's website, so if anybody wants to go out and find it, but Breaking Bourbon puts it out there for you. 74% evaporation loss. So 26% of the whiskey that went into the barrel came out of the barrel.
So let's just do simple math. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say 200 bottles per barrel. It could be plus minus that, but that's pretty average. That means, like, if I'm doing my math right, you're not getting a lot of barrels out of that. Like you're getting 50 bottles out of that barrel, roughly 25%, maybe a little more. Not a lot.
So, okay. So we'll just quick math. 53 gallons times 0.26, 13 gallons. It's almost 14 gallons, which is not a lot. Not a lot of whiskey left in those.
Not a lot of whiskey. And it's funny that the barrels are gallons, but we measure them in liters. That makes no sense. Like, cause you get liter bottles or you get milliliters, and those don't convert very well. We need to figure out the whole.
Thank you, metric system. I'm not doing that math. Maybe Breaking Bourbon did. You can go check out their BTAC. Who knows?
You can go in there if you wanted a math expert. It's not the two of us. We're more of whiskey drinking talkers than we are math talkers. So now we gotta step it up. I never thought I would say this, but we're gonna step it up in age and step it up in proof here. We're going to the illustrious Eagle Rare 17, but that name is very tricky because this is the oldest whiskey they've ever put out in the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Eagle Rare 17 coming in at 19 years and 101 proof. Now, you're probably thinking this is going to be an oak bomb. Like 19 years old, oak. I hate to break it to you. I didn't get a lot of oak on the nose.
No. I mean, on the nose, I got like campfire marshmallows. Like I get a little bit of wood, but it's almost like sweet, like super sweet, charred marshmallow. I don't know how else to put it, but
the more you say that, marshmallow graham cracker, s'mores without the chocolate, the old s'more. But I also get this nice black cherry note, like a Luxardo type cherry going on. Shout out to the Luxardo cherry folks. But it's one of those things where I get a little bit of black cherry. I get a little coconut almost. which I think is kind of that marshmallowy kind of notes that happens. But I can tell this is going to drink creamy by the nose. Does that make sense? Like, do you ever like smell something? You're like, that's going to be a creamy whiskey or creamy bourbon. Like this smells like it's going to be a rich, creamy bourbon.
Yeah. I mean, like I thought big vanilla notes, like, and when I think like big vanilla notes, I always think like ice cream, like melted ice cream. So I've not tasted this one yet. So based on nose alone, I think I really like this one for fall.
I mean, this is a campfire whiskey, if you could have one. I don't know if the palate matches the nose very much at all in this. But the flavors are delightful.
Oh, I just figured out what it was.
You figured it out, everybody.
All right, on 3, we're both going to shout out our first tasting impression, first tasting note. We'll see if it matches. 1, 2, 3. Root
Cola.
beer.
Oh, we're in the same family.
What'd you say? Cola?
Cola.
Yeah. It's sugary.
Like, it is. It has that. It's got like that pop of like cola. You know what I mean? Like kind of like.
That's so interesting. It's a feel. It's not necessarily like a flavor, but
yeah.
I get the flavor of like A&W root beer. Like have you ever been to the A&W hamburger shops?
When they were around for like 6 weeks, yeah, and then they all disappeared.
Or you like pull on the tap handle. It was awesome as a kid because it was like, oh, I'm at the bar. You just pull on the tap handle, pour your own root beer. It's like the flavor is also the feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that, like pop in the mouth feel. There's a nice cherry note, right? I can see root beer. I could see like a Dr. Pepper, like as well. In that where you're getting a lot of different flavors. If you wanted to lean that, but like,
is that 23 flavors?
23 flavors. And if you add cherry, it's 24. But I think what's really nice about this is the excitement on your palate. It's waking up the middle and the back, not so much like tip of the tongue sugar sweetness, which I would expect with cola, cherry, brighter notes. It kind of is middle palate, back palate. So that oak and the astringency shows up on that back palate as you kind of take that second sip. But that mid palate taste is pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm thinking that you said it early. You said the nose doesn't match the palate. I think because you were leaning like, oh, this is going to be super creamy. Mm-hmm. But then the palate is like pops of like soda and pops of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I like this. It's almost like savory because it like wakes your palate up, makes your mouth kind of water.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Like savory, I think like, okay, just if you had any food out there, just sprinkle a little bit of like coarse sea salt.
Yeah.
It just wakes it up. That's what I think about this.
Yeah. And I think what's really nice on the back half of this, as it lingers around, there's just like kind of bitter chocolate kind of thing that happens. Like it kind of turns over and there's just like little hint of just not cocoa nibs, but like not all the way like bitter chocolate, but a little dark chocolate, dark to milk chocolate somewhere in there where it's kind of nice. And that finish lasts a good while. Like this is a long finishing bourbon.
That's funny because my first thing I wrote down, so I thought root beer, then I wrote down dark chocolate drying. Like it's weird. It like goes like through waves. It's like it pops up front and then it kind of dark chocolate. Like sometimes you get those dark chocolate candy bars, like not candy bars, but you get dark chocolate bars, like at the specialty Trader Joe's or whatever, and it's like 75% cacao, instead of milk or butter and fat. That's kind of what this is.
The good stuff. The stuff that's actually good for your heart, right?
I guess. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, for the first time having those two whiskeys, holy, we're in for a treat if they keep getting better from here. And And you know what's really funny is these two often carry the highest age. Secondary, they normally carry the highest price. But from a talk about perspective, they're not talked about as much. I think because we live in an age where everybody wants the proofy bourbon or the proofy whiskey, that these don't get the shine that the other ones do. Normally you hear about George T. Stagg, you hear about William LaRue Weller, and Handy, I think, is the forgotten one in all of this. But you see the price tag on the Eagle Rare and the Sazerac, and you see the acclaim for the Weller, the WLW and the George T. Stagg.
I think that's your two markets, right? It's the high proof, high proof, right? High proof name recognition, Weller, Stagg, and on the other end, it's high age. It's like, it's hard to not value a bottle in today's market that's 17, 18, 19, 20 years old.
Well, because, they had to wait for it, right? Like they made a conscious effort to sit this back. I mean, they've been doing the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection for 23 years. So it's like, this is a process. They've been able to build this time and again, year in, year out, before there was a bourbon boom.
Yeah.
Like, this has just grown in popularity to where it's impossible to find. But I'm sure the people that were paying attention to whiskey and bourbon in 2000 could have got the whole lineup for $200 probably. I don't know what the retail was back then, but like nothing compared to what it is now.
Yeah, really. It'd be nice to go back to those days, but we always talk about that. Back in my day. And I'm going to tell you the rest of the story like Paul Harvey. Okay, boomer.
It was funny. We were at work and my boss was like, I'm about to tell everybody I'm a boomer. And he's like, does anyone know what this picture was? And the picture was of now I'm going to forget the name of the, it's the wheel where you click it and it turns to a different picture.
Oh shit. Yeah.
And you look through it and he's like, I'm a boomer. And I'm like, have a child. You're not a boomer because that thing is whatever the name of it is ever popular with my son.
It's not the Viewmaster.
Oh, Viewfinder. There we go.
Yeah. That's what it is.
We'd come up with it. I mean, I was like, I had one. And then there was two people on my team. They're like, I've never seen one of those things in my life. I was like, what kind of childhood did you all have? Obviously not a very fun one. If you didn't get to look through and click a button and see an eagle and then a tiger and then a frog. I mean, it was exciting.
Yeah, it was like you're on a safari.
It was. I clicked the shit out of that thing until it broke. Just click, 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 click. And then guess what? Jameson does the same thing.
Destructive as hell, these kids.
Oh man.
I'm like, I don't even like breaking out my old toys. Like, I do that because I still have some, but I'm like, God damn, these things have survived like 30 something years. And you get them out for 5 minutes and they're fucking broken. Now, I don't know if that's just because the plastic's deteriorated or what, or kids are just built different these days, but damn.
Kids are built different. I mean, I feel like these kids can do so much more than I ever thought about being able to do when I was 4 years old. I look at my son, I'm like, you're doing stuff that I did when I was like 7.
Yeah. So taking a detour here.
Yeah.
Liam brought home papers. He's in 3rd grade. Brought home papers, graded papers, from his teacher. All hundreds. Some 100 and whatever bonus points. Literally, he's doing squares. Like, he's figuring out the area of squares and rectangles and shit. I'm like, 3rd grade? I'm like, I don't think I really learned that until like 7th grade.
It's called geometry. And that's
what I said. I said geometry I took in 9th grade, right?
Sophomore year of high school.
Yeah, I took it in 9th grade because I was advanced. I took algebra in
I think I had
in middle school.
I had algebra freshman year and geometry, but whatever, still not fun.
But yeah, I'm like, he's literally learning the square of plots of land.
Yeah. But you know what? If he can figure out how to do, square footage and acreage and all that, man, those are life skills that will go a long way. You know what also goes a long way? Being able to take the ABV and turning it into proof. And so that gets us back into whiskey because it's just times 2. I can do that math. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not the sharpest pencil in the drawer, but I do know how to calculate, 62.45. You know what that means? 124.9. And so we are moving into Thomas H. Handy Sazerac, straight rye whiskey. Now, you made an interesting point beforehand around why is Thomas H. Handy, part of the antique collection. And I got us to wonder. So let's pontificate for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think Thomas H. Handy is part of the antique collection?
I don't know. I mean, I still don't know because it's not old, right? It's what is the? I still try to wrestle my head around it. Like, okay, it's $125. It's bottled with these fancy wine bottle, this fancy label. It's 6 or 7 years old, but it's the proof, right? So they proof it up. It's a high proof rye whiskey. Is that the value? I think that's what consumers like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody sees baby Saz, as they say on the shelf. That weird bottle with the long neck, bartender's friend, because they can slam it on the bar and pour a cocktail with it. But it's like 94 proof.
Yeah. I mean, it's not.
So it's like, obviously it's not 18 years old. I don't know. I kind of wrestled my head around it, but I know that 4+ years ago, when we tasted it together on the podcast, it was damn good.
Mm-hmm. So this always, when someone asks me something, where do you go first? You used to go to your Britannica encyclopedia. Not anymore, kids, because we're boomers over here. I had a set of encyclopedias when I was a kid. They were definitely like third generation, like from our grandma.
They're so old, you had to make sure they were still current. Yeah.
Yeah. But the question is, who is Thomas H. Handy? That's a good question to even ask right here. So Thomas H. Handy, actually is credited. This is from, let me restart this. So who is Thomas H. Handy Sazerac? And so Brian Donnelly wrote this from The Spirit Educator. So his history goes, it's impossible to tell the story of Thomas H. Handy or Sazerac rye whiskey without telling the development of the famous Sazerac cocktail. So there's this person, Antone Picard, was a pharmacist and owned an apothecary on Royal Street and from the French Quarters in Northern Illinois, in New Orleans, Louisiana. He was the creator of the now famous, his last name, bitters, and often credited for inventing America's first cocktail. This cocktail would undergo many changes and adaptations and transportations before being eventually known as the Sazerac. So why all is that important? Well, Thomas H. Handy, also from the area, would go on to really be able to focus on building that brand around the Sazerac. And he is kind of credited for trying to take this forward, make it a like one of the first prefabbed cocktails or, ready to drink cocktails. And his spirit lives on. So my best estimation from just really reading this very quick history here, which is a really well done article. I'd like to actually read all of it here after the show, is that it's the idea of telling the story of the brand that brought the Sazerac to life. And Thomas H. Handy was a part of that. And the Sazerac House in New Orleans is a very big portion of that. So I think it pays the homage to in 1970 when Sazerac purchased back the rights for the Bitters Company, and that was once owned and operated by Thomas H. Handy and is under control of Sazerac now. And then in 2006, Sazerac Company released the Sazerac Rye, and then later on would produce the Thomas H. Handy.
And on Thomas H. Handy, the bottle, the Sazerac House is featured.
Correct. So,
okay. So put it two and two together. Here's the deal. Bartenders like higher proof spirits to go into their cocktails because then they don't get lost.
Yep.
High proof spirit, Thomas H. Handy, make it in a Sazerac. You're crazy. But if you got money, make the best damn Sazerac you've ever had.
It's got to be.
So carries a lot of flavor, high proof, carries, through your cocktails.
So while this may be the infant of the group from an age perspective, I think the flavor profile, especially on the nose, is definitely there. The citrus candy, bruleed sugar, vanilla, warmth, baking spice, a traditional Kentucky style rye with that back baking spice of a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of clove, a little bit of cinnamon, yada, yada, yada. But I think the citrus changes over time in this one, which is very nice. So it's never the same type of citrus. And you have a very good insight from your time working at Starbucks.
Yeah, so I'll just say on the nose, nosing through all 5 of these before we hit record, this is my favorite whiskey on the nose alone. It is super orange forward. My first note was orange tea. Then I had to sit with it for a little while. And then I realized what it was. Starbucks, back when I worked there, however many years ago, 15 years ago, back in my college days, they had a drink called the Passion Tea Lemonade. And it was basically like a herbal tea mixed with lemonade. It was an iced tea. Like, it was a shaken drink. I usually used to bring it home at the end of a shift because I didn't want to drink coffee late. That's what this reminds me of on the nose. It's like, boom, rush of fruit, rush of like tea, herbal notes. Like, it's just all there. Mm-hmm. Which historically, I don't really like herbally ryes. But this one like triggered a memory for me. So I really liked the nose. So I was like, it's super familiar, even though it's been a really long time since I've had that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that kind of carries forward into the palate. I have this idea of like a citrus marmalade on top of like angel food cake. So high sugar content, maybe bruleed down a little bit. So you got a little crustiness on your marmalade or your jam, like orange citrus jam, over some angel food cake because there's that vanilla that's soft in the background with a little bit of that clove and nutmeg. That's perfect for fall. I think what's really interesting about all of these that we've had so far, they are perfect for fall. Like it comes out at the right time. But I think this one is very desserty, very sweet on the palate. Doesn't have that astringency that the other ones have. I think it's more of it makes you want to drink it a lot and in very fast quantities. Yeah,
like it would just go real quick. And the proof, yes, it is a higher proof, but I don't really drink that it's high proof at all. Like it is super easy to drink.
Yeah. What'd you get on the palate? Did you get anything exciting?
So on the nose, I had written down funnel cake, and I think that's what's carrying forward for me is like that bready funnel cake note, fried dough, but it's definitely vanilla and green tea. Like, so like the green tea, the herbal, one.
Yeah,
just continues. Like it's green, like it is a little bit of like herbal grassy, but the citrus, the green tea, those just keep hitting me. Vanilla. Yeah, this one's all over the place. It is, but it isn't. Like it is what I expected it to taste like, but it's not what I was expecting in this lineup.
Which I'm really surprised that the ryes have really been stellar so far, because I wouldn't think Buffalo Trace and like this amazing rye whiskey. Just not what I put my head around. Like I've had really good rye, like E.H. Taylor rye, love it, super unique. I love, having a bottle of Sazerac. I think it's great for cocktails. I think it's great just to sip neat. But these ryes have really just shown up in this collection.
Stand out a lot.
Yeah. So now we're moving into what some would probably say is the piece de resistance, William LaRue Weller. This is coming in at a whopping 133.6. It is roughly 11, 12 years old, somewhere in there, from an age perspective. And I feel like this one is the one that always gets the most scrutiny, whether good, high praise, or if it's not up to the standards of people have had before, they dump on it. What I'm going to say, I'm just excited to drink it. I know it's not going to taste like crap. So I'm just excited to dive in because this one is a Scott Dilly special on the nose for me. When I think of what Scott has always told me about Buffalo Trace, this is a Scott Dilly nose to me. It was cherry, vanilla, and cola. Like it was Buffalo Trace through and through. And I can't get those nosing notes out of my mind from when we've had our Weller flights and done all of that. I went back and read some show notes and things about our Weller coverage in the past. And this one kind of lives up to those notes that you've always kind of said rang true.
Yeah. I had kind of a hard time with this one, like getting a lot on the nose initially. It took a while. I think it wasn't that it smelled like overly proofy, like too high proof, but it was just like I couldn't really sort out any predominant notes. But when I went back to it, it's kind of like graham cracker. So like a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of like vanilla, like bready, like crust, I guess you could say. But then also like on the nose.
That's typical of wheat too, right? That bready note's very typical of wheat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, wheat bread and graham cracker crust, like, yeah, but this one also just has like a little bit of like a musty, I don't know, this might not sound very good, but like kind of like musty, like basement, like woody, like I don't really know.
You went to Grandma's cellar? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe it's like
cellar and
you're walking into an old
WLW?
brick house. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Like it's like just kind of like damp wood. Maybe like cigar box. Cedar. I'm wrangling with this one. I don't really know. Like based on the nose,
I think you could definitely go Rick House in this, like wet barrel. I think that's the oak in this one.
Yeah, the oak definitely the woodiness shows up in this one.
Kind of showing differently. I think you're getting that proofiness. You're cutting less, so you can get more barrel influence. And I can definitely see where you're going with from the bready notes. I've not drank this one yet, so this is a live react, as the kids call it now.
Yeah, I poured a little bit more in my glass because it had been sitting here for so long since we nosed it, just to see if it would change at all.
This is the first one where I get a ton of barrel influence on the palate. Now, what I would tell you is, now that my palate is adjusted, it's a fine tasting whiskey. This for me is wheat bourbon at its kind of finest.
It's proofy. Yeah, I mean, it's proofy. Woof.
It carries the 133. This would be fun. I know the proofs are different, but to try this against cellar aged.
Save it. We'll do it.
Similar age, you know?
If people want to hear it, let us know. Because, yeah, we should definitely do that. Maybe we'll release like a special episode. Maybe we'll release like a special clip, or maybe on Patreon. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, Patreon only podcast. There we go. Patreon.com/Bourbon Lens. Come join that growing community. We have a awesome time ahead of us, and our next Patreon opportunity is actually going to be hanging out with the guys from Four Branches. We're going to be celebrating Veterans Day, and it's important now that we celebrate those people because they give a lot. And we're excited to hang out with the guys from Four Branches here in a couple weeks on our Patreon. That'd be November 4th, I believe. So it'll be here before you know it.
So just thinking about this one a little bit more, it's almost like licorice and wood. Those are like the two notes for me, like anise and wood.
You know, I can definitely see that licorice, like black cherry, like
sweet, but also kind of like bitter. Mm-hmm. It kind of plays with your palate a little bit.
Yeah. I think again, that dark cherry note, like a cherry that's set at the bottom of an old fashioned and then you eat it kind of thing. So it's getting there's a little bit of citrus. There's a lot of bit of oak. The vanilla is definitely there, like, cause it's time in the barrel, right? It just makes sense.
Yeah.
But licorice is probably about spot on.
I'm certainly glad I didn't try this one first.
I think it would have punched your palate out.
I don't think I would have liked it at all.
Mm.
It's a It's a strong whiskey.
I think this one benefits probably from a drop. I've not done it yet, but a drop of water in this one probably really livens it up.
Yeah.
So if this one was proving, oh boy, get your antlers out, baby. We're going to find the stag. So we now have George T. Stag, the last one of the bunch here, coming in at a whopping 135 proof even. I do own a bottle of this, kind of, sort of. My dad bought a bottle. My dad can no longer drink. He wants to sell the bottle. It now resides at my house, so he doesn't sell it. And so that is how I keep good whiskey away from being sold in the secondary market, is I hoard it for myself until I'm allowed to drink it.
Yeah.
But are these the antlers you are looking for? And I always say, when in doubt, grab onto the antlers, because they're going to go for a ride, because George T. Stag is a hell of a bourbon, typically. Not tried this one other than nosed it, but this is another Scott special to me on the nose. But I'm going to let you go from a nosing perspective.
Yeah, I think this one is leaning where I typically go with Buffalo Trace. It's pie crust, like cherry pie, like cherry cobbler. It's got a little berries to it, but then I come back to it on the nose. This is all on the nose. Like cherry cobbler, but baked, where the crust kind of gets burnt, a little bit overcooked, maybe caramelized. But I also get like a little lighter cherry sweet tart note that kind of carries with this one. You definitely get the alcohol. You definitely get the ethanol.
The cherry note that I get is cherry Pop-Tart.
Okay.
So you got that crusty outer layer, then you got that cherry kind of sweetness, and then you got that cherry sugar on top. And by the way, cherry Pop-Tarts are the best. You all can come. Anybody wants to come at me. I don't have a social media, but you can jake@bourbonlens.com. I'll answer your emails and I'll fight you. Cherry Pop-Tarts are the best. Okay.
Do you toast your cherry Pop-Tarts?
No, straight out the package. Enjoy life. I don't got time to toast Pop-Tarts.
Straight to the gullet.
Life's too busy with two kids.
Yeah, if you're eating Pop-Tarts, you don't have time.
Yeah. But the note I thought you were going to give me that I got right off the bat was a little bit of like pipe tobacco or fresh tobacco. Like when tobacco's wet and like you pass by a barn and it's been hung, that's kind of what I get a little bit in this one. But the oak, spice, vanilla, cherry, almost like a powdered sugar or like a granulated sugar, kind of note, like, or a confectioner sugar, not granulated, like kind of sweeter, from a nose perspective. Excited to dive in and take a sip of this one.
Side note, I just had one of my old neighbors text me and said, "How can I get some Thomas H. Handy?" He literally said, "How can I get some Thomas?" He said, "A Handy Sazerac rye." I was like, "Lord knows." I said, "I'm tasting it tonight, and it's probably worth chasing."
Yeah.
Shout out to my buddy Dan. He listens to the podcast on occasion. He moved to Cincinnati about a year ago, so shout out to him. I may or may not keep that in the podcast.
First note that you get when you taste it: 3, 2, 1, go. Grass,
cornbread.
I got like a hayfield, and I'm not mad about it. I just get some earthiness to it. Right? There's like, I think somebody probably would have heard that and been like, "You don't like it." I don't mind earthy flavors. This is a grain product. If it has some grain, if it's got some hayfield, ain't nothing wrong with that.
It's it carries over. It's classic Buffalo Trace for me. It's hot. It's definitely got some proof to it.
It's cherry Pop-Tart on the palate. Once I get past kind of the like kind of wet field note, it's that cherry Pop-Tart with a lot of spice on the very back end. Like I'm getting just different types of spices. And I think this is your typical, like you said, typical Buffalo Trace, where you could get a variety of different spices on the back end. But the the main note, that cherry, vanilla, crusty note is right there in the front.
It's super enjoyable. The proof is high for me. I mean, people know, listen to this podcast, I'm not a barrel proof whiskey drinker. Yes, I like barrel proof every now and then, but it's got a lot of flavor.
That cherry like lingers for years.
That's pretty tasty.
Well, as they say, the show must go on. But we now know, because we've tasted 5 unique whiskeys, that the end is near. And so I have to ask, Scott, give me your top 3.
Oh, wow. All right. Quick hitter. I think my top 3 are Eagle Rare 17, THH Rye, and Stag. Yeah, that's it. I'm locking it in.
Locking it in. So heard it here first. Scott goes Eagle Rare 17, Thomas H. Handy, and Stag to round his out. I, like Scott, am going to include one of these into mine. I just truly enjoyed our first sip of the night. The Saz 18 would be my number 1. My number 2 would be the Eagle Rare 17. And my last one would be the William LaRue Weller. I just really liked how it rounded out, how it opened up over time. I don't think you could go wrong with Thomas H. Handy. I don't think you could go wrong with George T. Stagg at all. We're splitting hairs when we're ranking these. Like, they're all really good whiskeys. But that's how I'd go. I'd go Saz 18-1, Eagle Rare 17-2, William LaRue Weller 3.
All right, so I got to finish this out because I just got to know. Sazerac 18 was not far off at all. I just wanted a little bit more mouthfeel, like body.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably go with number 4 on that one.
Okay.
William LaRue Weller. That's a mouthful after drinking all 5 of these. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't in my top 4.
Going back to as I'll tell you my last one. I'm finishing off. I left a little bit of a nip in each of the glasses. That Saz 18, after drinking those high proof stuff, it just cuts everything. It's like delightful, watery goodness. Like, just love the mouthfeel on it, like to cut all of the thickness of the last ones. So I had Thomas H. Handy and George T. Stagg, or would be my last 2. I'm going to go for A, 4B. Thomas H. Handy and George T. Stagg are a tie. I like them both for what they are. I can split hairs on either one. I could go 4 or 5. I'm taking a cop out. I get it. I can't put one ahead of the other though. I can't. I like a lot about both of them.
Yeah.
And I would be lying if I put one behind the other.
I think this year's Handy is really damn good though. Like, it might not be for everybody. And for the people that were like me before we started recording, was like, why is this in the antique collection? It's 6-7 years old. I get that argument, but just familiar flavors for me. Like, it just kind of, and I'll probably taste these again tomorrow or taste them with other people and rank them a little bit differently.
But I will tell you this, the ryes outshine the bourbons in this lineup this year. I have no precedent to say that in years past, but these 2 rye whiskeys are phenomenal. 2 of the better rye whiskeys I've ever had.
They definitely held their own.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised and not surprised that you like Saz 18 as much as you did. Nosing through them first, I thought that would be where you would lean. Tropical fruit, orange candy, because I know you like that candied orange note.
Yeah.
You probably also like the oak influence on that one. But the proof, just going back to it, it just felt a little thin.
And I think that's what I like it, because it wasn't a chore to drink it. Like, sometimes, like, good whiskeys, heavy whiskeys are a chore. You got to get through them. You got to go back to them a couple times. You got to get all the flavors. Not only is it a great rye whiskey, it could be a session rye. like, if
I wouldn't
money to
welcome
blow-
that for the pocketbook.
Yeah. I mean, if I had money to blow, if money was no option, like I just, and I don't know, I'm not saying that the high proof people are wrong. I've started to gravitate towards lower proof. Just, it's easier for me. And I like easy.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, guys, you heard it here first. The Bourbon Lens has officially tasted the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection for the first time ever. We gave you our rankings. Scott's top 3 was Eagle Rare 17, Thomas H. Handy, and George T. Stagg. Did I have that right? Yeah, I had that right. And then Jake's were Saz 18, Eagle Rare 17, and coming in third, William LaRue Weller. Scott with the hot take of the night, though. William LaRue coming in 5th for him. And I couldn't split hairs because I'm bad. I always find a cop out. But thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is truly a great experience. If you get an opportunity to grab a bottle, let us know what you think. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear about it because this is a fantastic whiskey drinking experience, no matter if you have one of them or all 5 of them. Thank you so much to Buffalo Trace and the team at the team at Sazerac for sending us these samples. We truly appreciate it. For everybody listening, if you want to know more about Scott and I, go over to Instagram, X, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens. If you want to be a part of that growing Patreon community we mentioned during the podcast, go over to patreon.com/Bourbon Lens. We'd love to have you join us there. And last but not least, wherever you get good podcasts, make sure you're following us and giving us a review. We'd love to interact with you. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers.